In life, we all encounter obstacles, and those obstacles come in all different shapes, sizes, and forms. The question is, how do we handle those obstacles? Do we attack them head on, or do we allow them to make us quit? Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast, where we aim to motivate and inspire listeners to never give up on themselves, their dreams, or their goals. We will interview successful people from all walks of life as they share their no-quit stories when they had the choice to give up or give in, but they didn't. We thank you for listening, and we hope to be that jolt of positivity as you go for your greatness. Welcome to episode number 196 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is relentless. Our quote of the day comes to us from a former guest of ours, Robin Sharma. It's not the most talented who wins, it's the most relentless who does. Today's episode is sponsored by the good people over at West Fair Communications, who publish the Westchester County Business Journal and the Fairfield County Business Journal. These newspapers do a wonderful job in covering all aspects of the business world within two of the most influential markets in the New York metropolitan area. You can also take advantage of their daily news feeds, which keep track on the companies and thought leaders in these important regions. For more information, take a look at www.westfaironline.com. Trust me, once you start reading, you won't quit. I had a lot of fun interviewing today's guest. Vasavi Kumar's honesty and transparency is tough to miss. She discusses rehab, being recently fired, but never giving up. As a former television host, she is using what she learned in front of the camera to help others get their message out. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Vasavi, I'd like to welcome you to the No Quit Living podcast.
Thanks, Chris, for having me. I'm thrilled to be sharing my own No Quit Living story, and I really hope that your listeners will get something from it.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, because I do feel like a lot of times in life we do want to quit, and so I'm excited to share my story.
Well, I will forego the next question, which is, are you ready to bring it today? Because I know you are. So speaking of your no-quit story, why don't you go ahead and share that with our listeners?
Okay, so I think that in my life, there have been multiple times that I've wanted to quit. I'm going to touch upon a few where I feel like I really, really wanted to quit, but I didn't. First would be right after I got divorced, where I was all alone for the first time in such a long time. I am like a serial relationship girl. Being single is something that has been something that I've struggled with. And I think after I got divorced, I kind of felt like my whole identity was taken away from me because I was so good at being a wife. And I say that very facetiously. I was so good at being a wife. I was so good at playing that role. And then after I got divorced, I kind of felt like, well, who am I now? And so I didn't want to give that role up. So I immediately got into a rebound relationship. And I'm like poking fun at myself just to show how many times it takes before we learn lessons in our life. And so I got into another relationship, a very toxic relationship for 4 years, lasted 4 years, landed me in rehab. Here I am, this like smart Ivy League educated girl, coming from a beautiful immigrant Indian family in rehab. And obviously now that's no longer the case. I am very much clean and sober. But, at that point, I really wanted to throw in the towel. I was like, this is it. I don't even know who I am at this point. Here I was running a very successful business. I was bringing in close to $10,000 a month just with one-on-one coaching, nothing more. I'm, extremely good at marketing myself, very good at the services that I provide, but I just got caught up in the wrong situation with the wrong guy. I went to rehab, came out of rehab, and I had an opportunity to really start over my life, start my life over again, do my life over again. So I spent much of the past year and a half after I got out of rehab really just focusing on myself. Were there times that I wanted to quit? Absolutely, because here I was, trying to remain sober, basically white knuckle gripping it. And then also not having the energy to want to put back into my business because I really just needed to focus on myself. And so instead of doing what I normally do, which is hustle hard, put myself third, fourth, fifth on the self-care totem pole, I made sure that I focused on myself, stayed away from the guy that I was with, even though he kept wanting to enter back into my life, focused on myself, focused on my health, didn't give up hope, didn't quit, didn't, go back to old ways. And I still wasn't working though. That's the thing. I'll tell you where I did want to quit. I wanted to quit because for me, my entire identity has been wrapped up in finances. Always, how much money I make and how much money is in my bank account has always dictated how I feel about myself. And so when I got out of rehab, I had like literally $55 in my bank account because I'd spent much of my money on lawyers, on rehab, on having to sustain myself again. And I had my parents taking care of me. Can you imagine what that's like at the age of 35 to have your mother and father take care of you financially? It is not a good feeling at all. But I didn't give up hope. I said, I'm going to do the work, the internal work that I need to do on myself so that I can come back tenfold and I can come back and really serve and I can come back and bring value. Because for me, Chris, if I'm not bringing value into the world every day with human beings, I feel useless. My number one priority in life is that I bring value to others. If not, I'm like, what am I even doing here? So just this past September, still jobless. It was like 3 a.m. I couldn't go to sleep. And I looked up a job for hosting television shows. I've always wanted to be on TV. I've been on TV a bunch of times on the guest side of things. And so I looked for a job as a host here in Austin, Texas, where I live. And I applied. It was for a lifestyle and entertainment morning show. So here I was, not having any purpose. Who the hell am I? I have no idea what I'm doing with my life. I'm not making any money. And 10 days later, I get a call and I find out they want me to come in and like they want me to do a test run with the host to have like a conversation with her and whatever. They loved me. They hired me in 3 days. I started September 20th and I started my new life being the co-host of our morning show here in Austin, Texas on the CW Austin and KXAN, which is NBC here. I did a complete 180. So I went from basically renting out a room in somebody's house to now living in my own house, which my parents were very generous, and they said, let's kind of collaborate and like get you a place that you feel at home. Very lucky to have my family. It's very hard for me to accept that because I am very self-sufficient and self-reliant. I don't like to take things from other people. I don't like to ask for things, but my parents wanted to help me out and they're really willing to give me a fresh start. Started this job where I didn't know anything. If your listeners or you are familiar with television, you have to wear an IFB. The IFB is where the producers are giving you cues, counting you down. And so here I am having to look at 3 different cameras, having to be engaging, having to be personable, having to be funny, having to make sure that I wrap out, with only 5 seconds left. And I'm like, it was the first time in a long time that I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything. And I didn't give up because I said, this is what I want. This is what I want. This is my dream. I always wanted to do, live television. And so I stayed in this job for 6 months. I was recently let go, which I've had mixed feelings about, Chris. Like when I was told that I was let go, just a few days ago, actually, almost a week ago, my immediate feeling was relief because it felt like it was a very stressful and toxic environment for me, and I wasn't fully using or unlocking my full potential. It didn't feel like it was. Something just wasn't sitting right, but I never gave up and I never quit. And when I was let go, it was kind of like, when you have just a bad marriage and you're like, it's time to separate. It's just time to separate. It's all good. Like there's going to be something good at the end of that tunnel. Whatever, it's all good. And so where I'm at right now today, as we speak, is my entire life has been a testament to not quitting and not walking away. But I want to just say something really quick about not quitting. I think that there are times that I wish I would have quit. And what I mean by that is because I know sounds kind of counterintuitive to what your podcast is about. Had I walked away sooner from a lot of situations, I probably wouldn't have learned the lessons that I now know. I probably wouldn't have suffered as much either. But I'll tell you this, because I stayed in a lot of situations and because I didn't quit, I am wiser because of that. I have learned because of that. I'm stronger because of that. And so a lot of times when people say, or, you hear like, oh, hey, maybe it's just time for you to walk away. I'm one of those people that never walks away. I'm like, no, I'm going to give it my all. I'm going to give it my all. Like, this is a blessing and a curse for me at the same time. But for me, I would rather know that I gave it my all and then it didn't work out than me walking away prematurely and wondering, I wonder what would happen if I just would have stuck it out. That's how I feel about my failed marriage. It's not even a failed marriage. We gave it our all. We went to couples counseling, marriage therapy, sexual healing, whatever. Everything under the book, we tried to make it work. Read books together, cried together. We tried everything. I tried to change myself. He tried to change himself. It just didn't work. But at least we walked away knowing we gave it our all. And that toxic relationship that I told you I was in, I gave it my all to the point of driving myself crazy, Chris. And then when it came to rehab, gave it my all in keeping my sobriety, staying in recovery, in this job, gave it my all, like literally had to deal with criticism on a daily basis every day, and still got up every day at 4:30 a.m. to be on air live at 7 a.m., makeup ready, hair ready. And it didn't work out. And now where I'm at is, you know what? I can honestly look back at every single situation that I've kind of shared with your listeners up until this point and say, I gave it my all. I didn't quit. And that's what will get me through this next phase of my life.
You know, I'm glad you touched on that, and I appreciate you being honest with your candor. Michael Jordan has a famous quote, is he can accept losing, but he can't accept not giving his best effort. And I think what you said is spot on. And obviously it's easy to be a Monday morning quarterback when you know the end result and say, oh, I would have gone back and done it over. But something that I often touch on is the fact is that you don't learn and you don't grow when everything's going great. So for example, when I'm handing you that championship trophy or that award, you're not learning at that moment. Yes, it feels good, it sounds good, people are excited for you, but it's not where you're learning. And I think what you said is literally what we believe at No Quit Living is it's during those ridiculously hard or difficult times where you become a better person, where you grow. So whether that was in rehab or whether that was, in your marriage prior to that, it's obviously led you to where you are today. So in 20 seconds or less, wanted to ask you, how do you define success, or what does success mean to you?
Hold on, don't start that timer yet. That's a good question. For me, success is who I am behind closed doors is who I am in front of other people. I don't have a split kind of that duality, that I am the same no matter where I go. That I'm not living a double life, that what I say to you is what I believe and is what I live, and that I can help, I can be of service to others because I am taking care of myself first and foremost, and therefore I can help other people. And I'm serving and I'm of service from a full cup, not an empty cup. I think that's over 20 seconds, but
it's it's 27, so I'll just edit it after.
Okay.
So follow up to that question is, if you had to define yourself in only one word, what would that word be?
Resilient.
I like it. One of the things we often mention and we go into is the importance of either a morning or a daily routine. And I was curious if you have a morning or a daily routine that you swear by.
Yeah, yes. So first thing in the morning before I even get up out of bed, I do pray. I don't even leave my bed. I mean, like, that moment before, like right before you open your eyes and then you're awake, like right before I actually open my eyes, I do pray and I just say thank you. I just say, I'm happy to be alive. Tell me what you need me to do today. I'm talking to something bigger than me in that moment. And then I start my day. That's it. That everything's fine. But like, have you ever had that when you bounce up out of bed and you're rushing and you're going, like, your whole day is shot at that point? For me personally, I cannot start my day like that. I'm already like a semi-anxious person. So for me to start my day like that is just not good for anyone around me. I always do that. I always pray first thing in the morning. And I always drink a cup of coffee first thing in the morning, but I always call my mother and my father first thing in the morning. I call my mother or my father, whoever's going to pick up. But because both of them are retired right now. My dad's a retired CPA. My mom's a retired cardiologist. My dad's now 70 and retired and spinning his wheels. He has no idea what to do with his life, but he's like the best man in the entire world. I mean, he's just, he asked me today, he asked me a question. He was like, he just asked me, like, how are you feeling, like, with being let go? And I just thought to myself, man, when's the last time somebody asked me how I'm feeling? You know what I mean? Like, how often I mean, like, yes, I have great friends and yes, whatever, but like, it's just so different when your parents ask you that. I don't know. I'm very close to my mother and father. I've gotten closer to them as I've gotten older. So talking to my mom and dad first thing in the morning is really, really important to me because they love me more than anything. And so my mom at the age of 30, I mean, I'm 36 and my mom still asks me, did you eat yet? She'll ask me, did you eat? And I'm like, no, I didn't eat yet. She's like, well, why didn't you eat? Like, make yourself a smoothie. And I get annoyed, but who else asked me that? Nobody else asked me that. So,
Vas, I have two questions for you. One, how are you feeling? And two, did you eat yet?
oh, that's so sweet of you. I did. How am I feeling right now? I feel really good talking to you. This is great. For me, like I said, it's important that I bring value. I know the conversation that we're having. I know it's going to bring value to somebody listening. So that part is checked off. Did I eat? Yes. I took my dog for a walk and I went to this like really bougie grocery store where I got a veggie hummus sandwich, and I got like this chicken unsalad. It's not chicken. It's actually vegetarian because I'm vegetarian. And so, yes, I did.
That does sound kind of bougie. So that's kudos for you.
It was $12 for a sandwich and a chicken unsalad. I'm like, I cannot believe I just spent $12 on this, but I was hungry, so I had to do what I had to do.
So maybe a difficult question for you, but if you remember, what is the best advice you remember receiving?
Well, it's the advice that my father always gives me, and still to this day, he always says, service first, the money will follow. That's it. Always. Because I grew up pretty well off. I mean, I never had to worry about anything a day in my life, but I remember when I was starting my own business, I just always asked my dad, like, how do I do this? How do I pay people to want to work with me? And he said, service first, just bring value. Ask people how they're doing, see how you can solve their problems. And you do that over and over and over again. He goes, and you do it without being attached, and the money will follow. And he's right. I'm very lucky in that department. I don't have to sell hard. I just really just try to help people as much as I can. So service first, the money will follow.
That's great advice. And I think something that we talk about quite often is the importance of what we talk about is paying it forward for others with zero expectations in return. And I think that goes for all facets of life, whether it's business, personal, relationship, whether it's romantic or just a friendship, is if you go about doing the right thing for others, I believe 100% that it comes back to you tenfold. And maybe it's not directly to you, maybe it's to your mother or father or kids or spouse. But to me, it's the whole karma concept. If you go about doing the right thing. So your dad is very spot on with that advice. So if you could go back now and give the 20-year-old version of yourself, and now let's assume that she would have listened, one piece of advice, what would that advice have been?
Darn. I mean, I get frustrated even thinking about this because it's like, yeah, had I known what I know now, I could have avoided a lot of heartache, but it's fine. It's totally fine. I love who I am. I love what I've become. But if 20 years old, what was I doing? Okay, so I know what I was doing. All right, so when I was 20 years old, what I would tell her is, you don't have to impress anyone. Be the type of person that you want to be impressed by. So instead of focusing all my efforts on impressing other people, which I used to do a lot of that, Chris, like always, how can I impress this guy? How can I impress these group of girls or these friends? How can I impress this person? Instead, be the type of person that I am impressed by. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. And I think It's advice that we probably all could have used at the age of 20. I know I might not have listened to it then, but I think it's great advice. And here's another question for you. If I could give you the opportunity to have dinner with anybody, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Well, I'm going to say off the bat, I do love me some LeBron James, 100%. Absolutely. Oh, sorry, you don't seem too happy about that. But who else would I want? I love LeBron James, I do. And I also really love Dr. Dre because I think he's an amazing producer and he has a gift for spotting talent and then cultivating them.
I'm a huge Michael Jordan fan, so I won't hold that against you.
Okay, all right.
So interview over. Thanks. This will never go live. So one of the things that I love to talk about is the concept of excuses versus results. And the reality is that you can't have both. So wanted to ask you if you had any advice you'd give to that person who is chasing something, some desired goal, but is always giving excuses and always has an excuse, what would you tell that person in regards to that?
I'm going to say what I say to myself, which is stop lying to yourself. Like you can't, like I always say, and I know you might edit this out, but you can't bullshit a bullshitter, right? So like I can spot through people's BS so easily because I've BS'd myself and I've BS'd other people for a huge majority of my life. Like I know how to manipulate. I know how to lie. I know how to BS, but I don't actually feel good about myself when I do those things. And so there was a point in my life, probably in my early 20s, where I just did a complete 180. And I just stopped lying to myself. I just stopped lying. Like I'd rather say, you know what? I'm making excuses for myself right now. That is an honest assessment of what's going on, rather than giving the excuse and having to be like, oh, I don't have enough time. No, how about you say to yourself, I don't have enough time is like the biggest bunch of BS ever, and I need to stop telling myself that. That's going to get you farther in life than the excuse. Do you know? I mean, obviously, if you have an excuse, that's not going to get you anywhere. But I would say, like, the first step is to admit that you're powerless. I mean, like, even in all of our 12-step programs, the first step is that you're powerless, right? It's just like, I am powerless over excuses. Like, if you can tell excuses until the cows come home, just be honest with yourself that you're lying to yourself. If that makes, like, I know it sounds contradictory, but be honest about the fact that you're lying to yourself, because you can work with that. You can't work with excuses.
No, I like that. And I think you said something interesting is it comes down to what you really want to do at that point. And I love how you said, you don't have enough time. That's the number one. Whenever I'm on stage, I always ask for participation, and I ask people to raise their hand and tell me, the best excuse that you've either given or you've either received. And literally, I don't have enough time is probably the most often given excuse that I have. And what I always tell people at some point is, what it means is that right now that's not a priority for you, because we all have the same 24 hours. Yeah. And I talk about this often, is it doesn't mean that you're a bad person or a bad father or mother or sister or wife or husband if you're not doing something at that time. What it means is that right this moment, that's not a priority for me. And maybe a week, a month, 2 days later, it will be a priority. But I think that's something that it comes down to is stop lying to yourself and taking ownership. And speaking of ownership, one of the words we love is accountability. I wanted to ask you what accountability means to you.
Yeah, so I'll tell you this, as someone who's tried to operate on an island all by myself pretty much my whole life, I now know in this season of my life, and looking back at kind of all the situations that I was in, just across comparison, when I was in that toxic relationship that I was told you about, it was extremely codependent. I isolated myself, and the relationship isolated me from so many of my girlfriends, so many colleagues. I didn't have anyone to talk to. It was just me and the guy that I was with. And then we had our little addiction that we were kind of going into this downward spiral, and I didn't have anybody to talk to. So that was one area of my life. That was one aspect of my life. This was back in the day, a few years ago, very, very recent, just a few years ago. Now, and I'm very grateful about the morning show that I was a part of. I met so many wonderful female entrepreneurs, so many guests that came on the show, women here, right here in Austin are doing great things. And I cultivated those relationships outside of just being a co-host. And so now when I got let go on Friday, I was able to text three or four of the women that I met through the show, let them know what was going on. They immediately connected me with other networking groups that I should be a part of, and just were there for me. And then one of my girlfriends here, she was like, "Boss, we should go to yoga." And I was like, "Okay, fine, let's do it." I gained some weight because of the stress and everything of just the job, and I didn't make the time for myself because I was exhausted. And so I have that as an accountability. Hey, I'll meet you at yoga at 10 o'clock on Friday, whatever. So the point is, for me, accountability is letting people know that I'm still alive and I'm still here, and I'm not just holed up. Because I'll tell you this, I am the kind of person, I can dig myself into a very dark hole and you won't even know where I am. And isolation is especially for someone like me who is a recovering addict, isolation is not a good place for me at all. And so the opposite of isolation for me is to have accountability. I have accountability by talking to my parents every day. I have, I have accountability with my fiance, who he doesn't he doesn't daddy me or anything, but he's there for me. He's not, I don't want his role to be that he takes care of me. I can take care of myself, but he's there also. And he's such a well-wisher. Accountability is being able to talk to my colleagues. Accountability is, booking appointments with my clients and being on time and being there, like just being accountable. And accountability is being accountable to myself. But guess what? We like to think we can just be accountable to ourselves. And if you're in and out of this new, like, if you're in a new phase of just really starting to up-level your life and you know that you've had your share of excuses in the past, then don't make it hard on yourself and find someone that you can be accountable with, and not just put all your eggs in one basket, because guess what? We're human beings. We're going to have a bad day. We're going to say we don't want to do this. So in those moments, you need to have someone that you can lean on and be like, listen, like can you hold me accountable to this or that? So.
You touched on something. It's the concept of an accountability partner, and it's something that I'm a huge believer in. I myself have 3 accountability partners that I speak to on a weekly, and 2 of them I actually speak to on a daily basis. The 2 of them and I, we have a 3-way group chat that we continually talk to each other. But for any of our listeners that are listening, what Vas just touched on is, in essence, what it means to have an accountability partner. Is it's somebody that A, you're accountable to, but B, they're accountable to you as well. And it only works when it's a 2-way street. So for example, if you were, let's say, above me in a working relationship and you were my accountability partner, it doesn't work if I'm the only one who's answering to you and you're kind of giving me assignments. It's got to be both ways. So I think that for our listeners out there, if you have not thought of or looked into it, please send me an email or send me a message, because it's such an important thing. And a lot of people, as you know, might not be able to afford a coach or someone that they can work with, but an accountability partner is the next best thing in some ways, because it's free, but in essence, you're really having that commitment where you say, okay, once a week or once every other week, I'm going to hold you accountable. You're going to be here, I'm going to be there, and we're going to do this together. So, but wanted to just change lanes for a minute. You have some exciting news. I know that you have a program coming out, but I also wanted to ask if you wouldn't mind just also telling our listeners a little bit about your podcast as well.
Yes. So I'm actually going to be interviewing you on my podcast soon, Chris, and I'm very excited about that. Being Human with Vasavi. I don't usually have lots and lots of guests on, because I found it easier for me to just do like short little interviews. But I met you. I really love what you're doing. And so I'm excited to be talking to you on my podcast soon. But what I realized was this, as far as what's exciting and happening. I'm the kind of person that I could take a situation and I could either feel really, really sorry for myself, okay, like total victim, and be like, oh my God, my life sucks. Or I could say, screw this. I'm going to take this as an opportunity to take what I have learned and I'm going to pay it forward. Because, like, if you remember me saying this in the beginning of this conversation, I need to be bringing value to people. When I don't feel like I'm bringing value, I feel useless. I need to be of service. So I've come together, I have put together, a new offering called Putting the Me in Media. I'm taking everything that I've learned over the course of 6 months. That's like almost 200 shows that we've done on air. What I've learned as far as how to show up and how to show up in front of the camera, that presence, that grace, and then also off air. If you wanted to be on television, I'm talking about like your local news, let's just say, because you have a great product, book, service, whatever, DIY segment that you want to do. What kind of pitch would you need to write to an executive producer for that producer to be like, wow, this is a great idea? I know exactly what we're looking for. I can tell you right away if your idea is boring. I can tell you right away if it's not going to make for good television. We were on every weekday from 7 to 9 a.m. There are certain things that are appropriate. There are certain things that are compelling and entertaining. And there are certain things that are like total put me to sleep. So I've worked with, I was responsible for booking at least 5 to 10 guests per week. So I know exactly what we're looking for. And I know how to help people show up their best self. I mean, I remember being the co-host, we'd have guests that I would have to do segments with. And some of them, it would be their first time being on television. And we're counting down. And I just would look at them and I would say, you know what? You were born for this. You got this. You're good to go. I'm very good at putting people at ease. And I know that about myself. So This is a way to work with me. It's brand new. It's literally fresh in my brain because I was on television consistently for the past 6 months as the co-host, doing paid segments, unpaid segments, and then doing guest segments, and then also doing. I also produced our top of the hour, 7 a.m. and 8 a.m. Hot Topics, which you see like The View does that, Wendy Williams does that. So I produced all of our topics, all the elements that go along with it. But this is for anyone who, listen, whether you are a podcast interviewer or you want to be interviewed or you want to start a YouTube channel or you want to write a blog, it doesn't matter what platform you're trying to use, but there is a way that you need to show up and there's a way that you need to articulate who you are and what you have to offer in order for anyone to even bite, to be like, this person sounds awesome. This person sounds interesting. I need to learn more. At least getting that first foot in the door is very important. So you at least pique that person's interest. So if you go to vasavikumar.com/me, M-E, that is the page. And then you can book a 30-minute session with me from there, which is completely free. So I can really kind of understand how many years you've been in business, what kind of product or service do you have? Are you a personal brand? And then how are you going to go about pitching yourself to the local morning shows? I mean, it's so easy. You'd be surprised. Like, people don't know really who to reach out to. And like, I know exactly the process. And I think the process is what's daunting, and I can help simplify that.
Well, I appreciate that. And I would definitely recommend to our listeners, for those that have either a desire to improve or get out there, definitely to connect. And as you said, it is a free 30-minute call. So definitely recommend our listeners to check that out. So wanted to ask you, one of the things we often talk about are books. I was curious if you've read anything recently or if you're reading something now you'd like to recommend to our listeners.
So this is great. I'm rereading How to Win Friends and Influence People. I know it's an oldie, but I'm always around people. And I never want to think that I know it all when it comes to people. I mean, I am a licensed social worker. I understand human beings very well. I know what makes people feel good. I know what makes them tick. I know what makes them want to buy. I get all of it. But I never want to lose my own authenticity, and I never want to lose my own genuinity, if that's a word. That's not even a word. I don't even know. But you get what I'm saying. I never want to not be genuine with people. And so I'm constantly looking to improve the way I show up with human beings. I'm also reading poetry, which is so interesting, but it's this book. I'm actually looking at it. It's called Milk and Honey by Rupi Kaur. And it's just some deep stuff in her book. Like, it's just like the poetry is like, I never even knew I was into poetry. And I'm reading this stuff and I'm like, whoa, like it like hits you right in your soul, like really, really deep. So I'm reading some poetry. I'm actually trying to do something different because I always have read self-help, always read self-improvement books, marketing books, sales books. And now I'm like, you know what? Maybe I just need to use a different side of my brain, just kind of shake things up a little bit. So I'm reading a poetry book called Milk and Honey. And I'm just going to read you a passage. Okay. Okay. Here. Okay, well, I did not think I was going to be turning to this page, but she says, even after the hurt, the loss, the pain, the breaking, your body is still the only one I want to be undressed under. But that's the kind of stuff that she writes. It's great. And my point is like, it just makes me think.
When we're done here, I'm going to write you a poem later.
Okay. Wait, I got one more for you. Look at this. You whisper, I love you. What you mean is, I don't want you to leave. Like, I'm a total love bug. Okay. And that's also what I really want. What I want your listeners to get across is like, when you do adopt this, this no quit living, like you say, you start to really see things about yourself that you wouldn't normally see if you had given up. Right. And I read poetry like this and it just makes me so tickled pink. Like, oh my God, like, like I'm a very, like, I'm hardened, but I'm so soft underneath that. And I think not quitting in my life has shown me how strong I really am. And I'm happy that I haven't completely turned to stone, because you would think that my life would have turned me to stone, and it hasn't. So I can read poetry like this and still love it. Anyway.
So remember, you currently live in Austin, Texas, but you're still from Long Island, New York. So don't forget that.
Yeah, I do know that. Wait, I will always be a Long Islander. I think deep down. So,
what do you say? You can take the girl out of Long Island, but you can't take the Long Island out of a girl?
well, probably not. I mean, there are so many songs about girls from Long Island, so many myths, but so much is so true. I miss Long Island. My parents just sold their house on Long Island. Now they're in Philly. So, my sister is an oncologist at UPenn, and my brother-in-law is a neurologist at UPenn. They have two beautiful kids, and my mom's a full-time grandmother now, so they're in Philly.
That's
West
awesome.
Philadelphia, like with the Fresh Prince. Yeah,
Born and raised.
Born and raised. Yeah.
So we could talk for hours and hours and hours, but wanted to ask you again if you could just tell our listeners the best way to find you on either social media or, again, via your website, as well as your podcast for listeners who would like to check that out also.
I'm going to keep it simple. So my website is my name, vasavikumar.com. If you hear this, conversation between Chris and I, you enjoyed and you learned what I had to say, learn from, and you have further questions, you can just directly email me at vasavikumar.com, and I will be the one responding back to you. The reason why I emphasize that, because, sometimes you do email people and like they have their people responding for them. So I'm saying that because I read everything personally. Your information will not be kind of disseminated.
And I know that's true. I know that's true because you and I have emailed back and forth. So
yeah, we sure have.
So last question is, wanted to ask if you have any parting words you'd like to leave with our listeners.
Well, I guess what I want to say is that you without sounding so cheesy, but I've been really cheesy these past few days. I don't know why. Maybe you're catching me at a good time. I think you are really stronger than you give yourself credit for. And I think on the other side of wanting to quit, on the other side of wanting to crumble, on the other side of feeling like you're useless or that there's no hope or you're a loser, because we all have those feelings about ourselves. We all feel that way about ourselves at some point or another. On the other side of that, if you can just get through that hurdle and stay the course, you're going to find that you are extremely, extremely strong and resilient.
I love it. Yeah. Great advice. Resiliency obviously rings well with our No Quit tribe. So again, wanted to just thank you so much for not only your time, but also for what you shared with us. And hopefully we can speak again soon.
Same. Can't wait. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thanks, Chris, for having me.
Thank you for listening to episode number 196. Vasavi is quite an individual, and her transparency is refreshing. I love her morning routine, how she says before she even opens up her eyes every single morning, she says a quick prayer and starts her day off with positivity. The best advice she ever received happened to be from her own father, and I think it's advice that we all needed to hear. Her father told her early on to serve first and the money will follow. Such simple yet overlooked and, I feel, forgotten advice. Her parting words were spot on for our No Quit tribe. She said that we are all really a lot stronger than we give ourselves credit for, something I think at times everybody needs to hear. So as we end today's episode, I challenge you to keep going. Remember that you are stronger than you give yourself credit for, and don't quit. So go for your greatness today with strength, confidence, and aim to serve first and pay it forward for others. And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.